This is the fifth video in our series on using Google Maps in the Android emulator with JSON. In the previous video, we put markers on the map, but we did not fill it in with data yet. So we simply added the marker, but we've left the doInBackground method empty. The doInBackground method is where we're actually going to do our JSON call, and that's what we're going to work on in this lecture. For that, we're going to need to leverage an existing class we have called Network DAO. Network DAO will make calls out to the network, and we're going to do this in the doInBackground method of an async task because that will occur in a separate thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a different class called Online Plant DAO. I'm going to hold Control and press M, which will let us see this in high def. And we have a fetch plants method already. And fetch plants is fetching plants from an existing URI, view plants JSON. So we're going to change this just slightly. We're going to make a very similar method. We're going to say maybe fetch plants by location. So what we're going to do is we're going to say public, and then we'll say list plant. That's the return type. Fetch plants by location. And then we're going to say double latitude, double longitude. We can borrow a lot of the things that we have from the method up above, but first let me Control-Shift-O to organize imports. And what don't we like here? Public. Okay, add return statement. We'll take care of that in just a second. Also, I'm going to add some JavaDoc to this. I'm going to say, given a geolocation, lat plus lng, fetch plants within a specified range. Okay, return a list of plants that match that are in the range from the center point. That really doesn't make many sense, and I apologize for that. Okay, so what I need to do now is I need to get rid of my red lines because that's always the first thing that we want to do. So I'm going to declare array list plant results equals new array list plant. Now, array list is a class that implements interface list, so it's safe to create an array list and return it as a list. So we'll say return plant results. Okay, and save. And that save will take care of our red lines. Now what we can do is we can Control M, and we can go back to our to our plant map, our map of plants. Okay, Control M to get focus on this. And what we need to do from our map of plants, and by the way, this is an activity. This is the activity that we're looking at here. This is the activity that's drawing this map. What we can do here is we can declare private plant, let's see, what do we call that? Online Plant DAO, I believe. One second, let's double check. Online Plant DAO. And we declared that as Online Plant DAO implements the interface iPlant DAO. So we'll need to do a little bit of refactoring there, but we'll take care of that in just a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our map of plants, and we are going to declare a variable of type iPlant DAO, and we'll call that variable Plant DAO. In our onCreate method then, let's see, we'll Control-Shift-O, organize imports. In our onCreate method then, what we can do is we can initialize the Plant DAO. Plant DAO equals new online Plant DAO. And terminate with a semicolon, and save. Control-Shift-O, organize imports, and save. Now this isn't compiling, so let's see why now. We mouse over, and well, okay, we just need to import it. Looks like, okay, it looks like our import was just a bit slow. So we now have access to this online plant DAO method, and what I'm sorry, on Plant Dao object, and we want to invoke the fetch plants by location. Now we want to invoke fetch plants by location when we're in the on location changed method of map of plants, because this, I'm sorry, no we don't. We want to invoke it from the do in background method, because the do in background method is going to get called from the on location changed when our location changed. On location changed is going to pass a latitude, a longitude, and a range to the do in background method. So what we want to do here, instead of returning null, we want to say plant Dao, okay, and we want to say fetch plants by location, but we see we only have the fetch plants method available. Okay, the reason for that is polymorphism. Polymorphism sounds like an important word. What polymorphism means is that our variable, when we declare it, our variable has a type and a name. And that variable type determines the methods that we're allowed to call. The variable type might be different from the object type that gets saved into that variable. So the variable type determines the method we're allowed to call. The object type determines what those methods will actually do. We have a bit of a miss here because we've defined a new method in online Plant Dao, but we have not defined that method in the interface iPlant Dao. That's an easy fix. Let me go back to online Plant Dao, and as a matter of fact, I want to change this anyway because I want to add double range, just like so. Okay, and we'll say throws exception as well. Okay, a few tweaks we want to make to that method signature, and I save. Okay. I want to put this in the interface, and luckily Eclipse will let me do that. So notice that online Plant Dao has this method signature, but the iPlant Dao, the interface type, does not. The interface type only has the method fetch plants. This is an easy fix. I go to the online Plant Dao, put my mouse cursor on fetch plants by location, hold Control and press 1, and say create fetch plants by location, and the super type iPlant Dao. And sure enough, there we go. It has now moved, it has copied this method signature up into the interface, and I will save. So that's an easy way to keep an interface and an implementing class in sync. If you don't know what an interface is, don't worry too much about this yet. This is just a little bit of neatness that we want to take care of. So in any case, that's not really directly related to maps or JSON, but it's something we do want to do to clean things up in this specific case. Given that now, I'm going to go back to my map of plants. Okay. And now, when I go down to my do in background method, I can say Plant Dao dot fetch plants by location. See, this method's now available to me, fetch plants by location. The method's now available to me because I've added that method to the interface type iPlant Dao. Okay. Now we need to pass a latitude, a longitude, and a range. Where are we going to get these? Well, the latitude, the longitude, and the range are passed in from the onLocation changed method. Latitude, longitude, range. And the do in background method accepts a double ... params, which means that params is actually a collection. It's actually an array. So we just need to access everything in the order in which it was passed in. Latitude first, then longitude, and then range. So we can easily fill these in by saying params 0, which represents our first parameter, params 1, which represents that second argument, and params 2, which represents the third argument. We can pass them in that order, and then I'll choose save. Okay, now what I can do is I can click on the fetch plants by location, hold Control, press 1, and say assign statement to new local variable. And you see what it's going to return is it's going to return a list of plants by location, which matches exactly our return type. If you missed that, All I need to do in Eclipse is click on a method, hold Control and press 1, and it will automatically take that method's return and save it into a variable for me. So Eclipse did a little magic for me there. What I can do here is I can say return plants by location. And aside from handling a bit of exceptions, doing a bit of exception handling, which will take care of this red line, we're all set. Let me go ahead and do that exception handling, Control 1, surround with try catch. Okay, and to handle this, what I'll do, I'll declare the variable on line 139. I'll declare our return type equals new array list plant. I'll just initialize it to an empty array list. Control-Shift-O to organize imports. That way, if this succeeds, it's going to go ahead and populate that with a list of plants. If something goes wrong and we go to the catch, it's just going to return an empty list. So that's kind of a little way to bulletproof our application. Believe it or not, once I hit save, our map of plants class is now complete. Our map of plants class is now complete. All we have to do is finish filling in the details on the fetch plants by location method of online Plant Dao. And this is where we actually do the JSON parsing. Okay, so we know we get a latitude, a longitude, and a range. And if you saw my earlier video, we know that we're going to pass this in to this URL. Okay, so I'm going to get this URL, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste string URL equals boom. Okay, and let's see, that's a bit of a long URL, isn't it? So I need to put it in quotes. Okay, whoops, boom, and that's a bit off screen. Let me recenter. Okay, terminate with a semicolon. Okay, now what we need to do though is sending in a static latitude and longitude and range is not going to do much good for us. So what I'm going to do is I am not going to use the hard-coded 51.51369 and the hard-coded -017 blah blah blah. I'm going to split this string up a little bit using a little tool we can use in Eclipse. If I put my cursor in the middle of a long string, right now I'm putting it after the lat equals, and I hit enter, Eclipse will break this string into multiple lines. Okay, so I'm going to do that a couple more times. You see that what it does is it's still one string because we're using the concatenation operator, but it's broken onto multiple lines for readability. I'm going to do that after the equal sign for latitude and longitude. Actually, you know what? I have a better idea. I'm going to do it right here, and right here, and right here, and right here. That's going to keep things together a little bit nicer so that we can see each of the name value pairs. Lat equals, longitude equals, and range equals. Once we have this, I can highlight that hard-coded value and delete it. And after the plus, I can put in our parameter variable latitude. Okay? And once again, do the same thing on longitude. Oh, I need to add a plus after that as well. Do the same thing on longitude. Remove the hard-coded value. After the plus, put in the parameter variable longitude. And a plus. Delete the hard-coded range. After the plus, put in the parameter variable range and a plus. And save. This will assemble a URL, but it's going to be a dynamic URL. Instead of always being this very same latitude, longitude, and range, it's going to insert whatever values we have passed in to this method for latitude, longitude, and range. And then I'm going to save. Very similar to what we're doing up above here with this request URI. Now what we need to do is we simply need to create a network DAO and pass that URI in as the request, just as we've done above. Okay? Then we can get access to the JSON data that matches this URI. Okay? So I'm going to say, I'll put some comments here. The request URI will give us the JSON results we need. Okay? And then we're going to say access a network DAO for low-level networking functions. Network DAO, network DAO equals new network DAO. Okay. Okay, and then we say network DAO dot request, and we're going to pass in that string URL from up above. Okay, and the request method, if I mouse over this and press Control 1, assign statement to new local variable, that's going to take this request, okay, let's say string, we'll say JSON, JSON data, that's fine. Okay, what's going to happen is this network DAO is going to run this URL, take the results, and return it into this string. The results are what we see here. Okay, it's going to be this string of result data. Now the network DAO automatically handles this where we're using something we've created in a previous lecture. So I won't go through and recreate that just for the sake of time. But if you're curious, of course, you can always check out this project on GitHub. Also, if you look back in the video library for example, any of the beginning Android video libraries or the advanced Android video libraries, you'll see I do have a video where I actually create that network DAO and I explain it step by step. So if you're curious what's actually going on under the covers, I encourage you to look for that video. So I don't want to explain it here because it would just eat up another 20 minutes or so when I already have a video that explains it. So given the JSON data, I'm going to run here. This is exactly the stuff that's going to be in this variable called JSON data. What's here is the stuff that's going to be in that JSON data variable. There's this online JSON viewer, jsonviewer.stack.hu. I can paste, and then I can go to viewer, and it will show me this information in an easy to manage form. So we see we get the JSON variable, or the JSON data. We have an array called specimens. An array is a collection of multiple pieces of similar data. Within the array, for this case, we have 4 different objects, and that has a lat, a longitude, a plant ID, specimen ID, common name, genus, species, address, and notes. Okay, so this is what the data looks like. What we have to do is we have to parse this data from this raw JSON string into actual Java objects, and that's what we're going to do next. Once again, we can borrow an example I've done previously. We can say create a new JSON object. In this case, we're going to ask for a specimens array instead of a plants array, and then we're going to iterate over that data. Okay, so let's do that. So we're going to say, let's see, I'll put some more comments. The raw data. Okay, create a JSON object from the root raw data. Okay, JSON object. And let's see, what method did we use on that? I want to say we used, okay, we just used constructor. That's fine. JSON object equals new JSON object. And we pass the JSON data to that constructor and save. Okay. And now we're going to say get the array of specimens. Okay. JSON object dot get JSON array, and we have to give it a name. In JSON, everything is saved to name value pairs. And what name do we want to give it? Let's look at our JSON viewer, and we see the first array is called specimens. So if we ask for something called specimens, it's going to give us an array associated with this name, specimens. Okay. Put my mouse cursor, Control 1, assign to new local variable, and it's going to save this as a JSON array. And we'll just call this one all specimens. Okay. Okay. Next, we want to iterate over those specimens, so we're going to use an old school for loop. So let me go ahead and using an Eclipse shortcut, I'm going to type for, hold Control, hit space, choose the first option, iterate over an array. The array here is going to be the array called all specimens. Is it all specimens.length? I think we might actually need to call all, okay, we need to call that as a method. So all specimens.length. So this is going to iterate over each specimen result. And then what I'm going to say is create a new specimen object, and then we're going to say populate that specimen object from the JSON data. And finally, we're going to say add the specimen object to our results. Okay, let's do it. Create a new specimen object. Actually, it's a new plant object. Let me change that to plant just so we can be consistent. Okay, create a new plant object. So we're going to say plant, lowercase plant equals new plant, open and close paren, terminate with a semicolon. Okay, add the plant object to our results. So our results is called plant results. So let's go ahead and fill that line in, because if I don't do it now, I'll forget to do it later. Plant results dot add plant. Okay. And then we see the very last line is return the plant results. Okay. And save. Okay. Populate the plant object from the JSON data. So let's take a look at that JSON data again. Latitude, longitude, plant ID, common genus, species, address. Let's start with that. Plant.set latitude. Okay, and we're going to say latitude. Okay. No, I don't like that actually. What we're going to do is we're going to say I'm missing a couple lines here I need to fix. We're going to say we need to get our JSON object from the array. We need to do that first. So all specimens dot get, and we need to pass it an index. The index is going to be that letter I, which means each time we iterate, we're going to get the next element of this array. In other words, the first time we get element 0, which is flowering tobacco. The time after that, we get element 1, which again is flowering tobacco. And next time we get element 2, which is Russian sage. And the fourth time we're going to get a southern magnolia. So each time we iterate, we're going to get the next plant in this array. Okay? Because this variable I, we're going to add 1 to the variable I every time we finish this loop. So it's going to start as a 0, and that's going to get us our 0 plant. After we loop, it's going to add 1 to I. The next time we loop, it's going to get our number 1 plant. After that loop, it adds 1 to I again. After that loop, we get the 2 plant. Next, it's going to add 1 to I again, and we're going to get the 3 plant. At that time, I is going to no longer be less than the number of plants, so our loop will terminate. So all specimens.getI is going to return to us that JSON object at that location. So I can say JSON object, and then we'll say JSON plant equals all specimens get I. It doesn't like that. Let me make sure I'm doing that right. Let me look at my answer key. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I did mess up. We need to say all specimens.get JSON object. That'll be better. I. And save. And there we go. Okay, now populate the plant object from the JSON data. So what we can do is we can say JSON plant, and we're going to say get double. Okay. And we're going to pass in the name lat. Why lat? So let's look back here. Lat is the name. 51.511 is the value. Okay? We're calling get double because plant.set latitude, if you take a look here, is expecting to receive a double. We can combine these two lines into one like so. Like that. Okay? We could do it as two separate lines, or we can combine them together as one. It's fielder's choice. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for longitude. Plant.set longitude, JSON plant.get double, name LNG. Why LNG? If we look back, we see LNG represents longitude. Okay, let's keep going with that example. We'll go a few more, add a few more things. Plant dot set GUID, and that is expecting an int. JSON plant dot get int, and what do we call the int? We called it plant underscore ID. Plant underscore ID. Notice I'm surrounding each of these in the getter methods. I'm surrounding everything with quotes because the names are always strings. Okay, now just set the name. Okay, plant dot set genus, JSON plant dot get string. Okay, and genus. Okay, plant dot set species, JSON plant dot get string and species. Plant dot set common, JSON plant dot get string and common. And I'll verify genus, species, and common. Is that correct? Genus, species, and common. Finally, address and notes. Plant dot set address, JSON plant dot get string address, plant dot set notes, JSON plant dot get string and notes, and we're all set. So if you look at what we've done here, we've walked from raw JSON data to a JSON object to an array called specimens. The array called specimens we're iterating over one at a time. Each time we iterate, we're pulling off a plant object, and then what we're doing is we're creating a new plant object, and we're simply moving data from JSON into this new plant object. From JSON into this new plant object. We add the new plant object to our results, and then we return the results. Do a little bit of cleanup here, and as long as I didn't forget anything, I think we're okay. As long as I didn't forget anything, like maybe misspelling this, that should be the last line that we need. I'm going to choose save, and if all works well, I can deploy this into the emulator, pass in a latitude and longitude, and we'll see markers on the map. It will probably take just a few moments to run this in the emulator. Oh, okay, looks like I have one more thing I need to fix here quickly. This will be an easy fix. I'm just going to say add unimplemented methods. That's a stub we're not going to worry too much about. I'll save that. As soon as this saves, I'm going to right-click. We're not using that stub anymore, so it's not a concern. Right-click, say debug. Choose our already running emulator. This might take just a few moments to bring up, so I might pause the application while we're waiting for that, and then unpause as soon as it loads in the emulator. Just a moment, please. The emulator is now loaded, so I'm going to click on the menu. I'm going to choose Map. And what I'm going to do while that's getting ready, you see it's going to render the map. I am going to, we'll do this without the debugger first time around. I'm going to grab a known latitude and longitude, which is the one we've been using to test. I'm going to go to the DDMS. Okay. I'm going to enter a value for longitude, which will be the one in central London, the one we've been using so far. You see it's very close to 0 because the meridian is fairly close to central London. And I'm going to pass in a latitude. I'll just clean this up a little bit. Again, you see 51 relative to Cincinnati, where the latitude in Cincinnati is 39. You see this is about 12 degrees latitude north. I'm going to choose send. It might take just a few moments for it to grab this information. We choose yes, and we see that that has invoked onLocation changed. I'm going to go ahead and set a breakpoint in the onPostExecute method, just so we can see if we actually get results back. So set a breakpoint there. Okay, breakpoint's going. We see that, and I'll set a breakpoint in doing background as well. So breakpoint goes there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose step over. Okay, get our latitude, get our longitude. Okay, and then call the execute method. What's very interesting here is that the execute method is going to spawn a new thread. If you look very closely, you'll see we have several threads running right now. The highest number thread that I see is line number 27. As soon as I go back here, go back to my running thread, click and choose play, we should see another thread get created. Okay. Do in background, here's thread number 11. This is our do in background thread, which is separate from the UI thread. So because we're in a separate thread, our UI is still, take a look, our UI is still going to react. Okay, so notice that we have network processing going on. Well, in the meantime, I'm still able to interact with the phone. And sure enough, as we just saw, it's setting its center right near Hyde Park in central London, while in the background, this other thread is running, which I have currently paused. This do in background thread is currently running, and it's going to be fetching locations for us over JSON. So let's step in and watch what happens. I'm going to choose F5, or alternatively I can step into, and unfortunately, you know what, it's going to take me, I have to jump a couple hoops here. I'm going to have to do a couple steps in and steps out to actually get to this method because I have some recursive calls going on, but we'll be there in just a moment. So step in, step out, step in. Okay, now I'm going to step over, step over, step over. One really nice thing about using the debugger is we can watch it assemble this URL, okay? But then I can also have the option of mousing over the URL and grabbing the final value. You know, that's a little tricky. I can also just grab it right here from the debugger window, highlight, Control-C, and I can go into my browser, Control-T, create a new tab, paste this URL directly from the debugger, and verify that yes, indeed, I am going to get back 4 plants. I am going to get back 4 plants. Okay, so we make our network call. Okay, we request the URI, and we're going to get back a set of JSON data. And take a look. Here's our JSON data. This should look fairly similar. It should look fairly similar to what we got on the query that we just ran. Okay. So a lot of data, I mean 4 different plants, but it looks very similar to the URL that we just hit earlier. Okay, the URL that we hit earlier, and we got those JSON results. So we get the JSON data, and from the JSON data we're going to ask for the specimens. We're going to iterate over each specimen and populate a plant object, populate each individual field of that plant object, add it to our results, move on to the next plant, do the same. I'm going to click through this a little bit faster. Okay, so populate each individual field, add to the results, and then return the results. Okay, and we're going to continue to do this, and we're going to continue to do this until we have walked over each of the JSON results that we have in that array. I'm going to go ahead and choose the step return and allow this to take me back to the calling method. Okay, and one more time. Okay, I'm going to mouse over plants by location, and we're going to see that we have an array with 4 plants in it. Okay, we have an array with 4 plants in it, which represent the 4 plants that we saw in our browser. I'm going to go ahead and choose play, and remember that right now we are in the background thread. We're in the do in background, we're in the background thread. But as soon as I press play, it's going to return back to the UI thread in the onPostExecute method. And at this point, it's going to take each of those 4 plants and it's going to create a marker and place that marker on the map. So take each of the 4 plants that we've created, assemble together a marker, and put a marker on the map. Live from JSON data. So I'll go ahead and choose play and let that play through. I'm going to go back and sure enough take a look. And I think actually 2 of the plants I had the same GPS position. So we actually see 3 plants here, and there are markers. I can click on the marker and look what we have. For the title, we have the result of the toString method of that plant class. Magnolia grandiflora, that's genus and species, Southern Magnolia, Hyde Park and Regent's Park, London, United Kingdom. Okay, we click here, Nicotiana alata, flowering tobacco, Hyde Park and Regent's Park, London, United Kingdom. That's an ornamental tobacco plant, if you're wondering. Not the kind you would, you know, do anything else with. That's an ornamental plant there is. So they do come in ornamental varieties, actually quite pretty. Perovskia atriplexifolia, Russin sage, Hyde Park and Regent's Park, London, United Kingdom. If I made that range a bit wider, we would go ahead and see more dots throughout London, because we know the actual plantplaces.com map, it does have these 3 plants that we're looking at. Okay, it does have the 3 plants that we're looking at, but it has several other in the Hyde Park and Regent's Park area within London. So we could loosen up that range again and get a little bit more data. But nonetheless, you see that we have done the holy grail of mobile programming, which is to aggregate data from multiple sources to provide information. And that's something we really want to think about. The source of data is plantplaces.com via a JSON feed. The Google API is for Google Maps, and also the user's location, the user's current location. That's a source of data that can be a very valuable source of data. So this is things that we want to look at. These are things that we want to look at. This is the 5th video in the series, and it's been quite a bit of video to explain this entire concept. I hope it's been useful to you. If there is interest, I'll make a 6th video that will cover actually clicking on this, and that click will take you to a detailed web view that describes this plant. In other words, we'll continue to replicate what you see right now on the plantplaces.com website. We will put that on mobile. So this is the website, and you notice if I click, I can click on a link, and then that will take me to a detail page that describes the Perovskia atriplexifolia Russian sage. If there is interest, if you put comments and you would like to see that, let me know, and we'll make a follow-up video that describes that. But for now, we'll call this the 5th video and the final video so far in the Maps plus JSON sequence. Thank you very much.